Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday Morning Superheroes, the podcast where we talk about everything from the Penary Substitutionary Atonement to the Punisher. And today I have on the podcast a very special guest, Brandon Jones, the author slash scripter of the soon-to-be released comic book series, The Evil Men Do. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Well, thanks, Hollis, for having me. It's quite a pleasure to be here. I'm glad you reached out, and I'm very excited to get this going. Let's do it.
Yeah, me too. I am excited about new comics that actually have potential. My friends who know me are aware that I am fairly critical of many of the new comics that have come out in the last 5 years or so. There are some exceptions. There is some good stuff out there, but you have to dig for it, I think. So I'm excited to publicize new projects like that.
Well, hopefully this one lives up to your very high bar, sir. But if not, delete the video.
There you go.
I never knew you. All right.
There we go. We can just walk away. Okay. So to get us rolling, why don't you introduce yourself? Who is Brandon Jones?
And that's a very nuanced question. Who are we more than our thoughts, Hollis? Well, I'm an Arkansas native, Northeast Arkansas. Grew up in Jonesboro. Most of my life, I've lived in Ohio, Tennessee. No, I'm not an Army kid. I just moved there because I really wanted to get away from here, as people do when they get older, and then eventually came back, of course, as people do as well. But I really, growing up here, I really didn't, you're a kid, you hate where you grow up. Because I remember talking to people when I'd be on vacation, like in Hawaii or something. I was like, oh, what's it like to live here? Oh, this sucks. I'm like, yeah, but it's Hawaii. But, for them and the 5 jobs they have to work to sustain life, I guess that would be pretty terrible. But so I grew up with a very much storytelling at its core. My grandpa was a huge storyteller. He would make up just the most random funny things at night. My grandparents raised me for the most part. And then of course, we are on a Sunday morning. So I did grow up with the very, what's the word I'm looking for? Detailed and graphic and, preachers with their homiletics that, that you could just feel the fires of hell, tickling your toes and painting all these pictures. So it's this weird combination of the horror movies I grew up with, the storytelling from my grandpa, church, and then MTV. So this is how I got here. Because I'm a kid of the 80s, right? So I was a latchkey kid too, and I didn't live with my grandparents. So I watched a lot of stuff that, looking back now, it helped me become a better storyteller, but it probably didn't help me become a better teenager. You know what I mean? So,
well, that's how it all goes.
hey, I'm still here. I'll be
still here.
So it's not all lost. Sorry, Mom. I was right.
Congratulations. Congratulations for surviving that long.
That's right. Look at that. And, post-COVID, nothing happened before 2020 now. So anyway.
Yep, it's all just a wash after everything before.
It really kind of is. I'm just like, bits and pieces come back to me. I'm like, oh, yeah, that was fun.
Oh, cool. Awesome, man. So you are actually in somewhat of my neck of the woods too, because I work at, as I've said before, the most podunk, almost branch of the University of Arkansas, the University of Arkansas at Hope and Texarkana. So I am in the same state as you.
We have the 2 ends covered, Southwest and Northeast.
Exactly.
If you come anywhere around there, you're going to deal with handsome Hollis and then me. So we don't play.
There we go. No, not at all.
But I will add, though, that I do own a comic book store here in Jonesboro, B&B Collections. And then I'm a co-owner in a comic book convention business. We're having our 4th convention this July at ASU, Arkansas State University, not University of Arkansas. Red Wolves. And so we're having our convention there. And I actually worked at ASU for like a decade. So
that's awesome.
And I applied to U of A and they blocked me. So whatever.
Oh, they regret it now.
I'm kidding. They didn't. They're very nice too. I have no loyalties to either one. So. I'm a Buckeyes.
There you go. Cool.
Just
so Oh,
No,
are we
I'm
here?
just saying I'm a Buckeyes fan, so we just lost your audience.
Oh, no, I'm sure there's some in the audience. I don't have any sports loyalties, so
Oh,
that
okay, cool. I
really
don't
doesn't
even watch
matter.
it anymore either. But
There you
anyway,
go.
no, I'm taking over your show, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we're good. I do want, before we go into your new comic, I want to put a quick listener discretion note that this comic is definitely more towards the R-rated, and we're going to talk in this episode about more of those R-rated type topics, including but not limited to sexual assault, abuse, murder, and human trafficking. So viewer discretion and listener discretion is definitely advised. If you have any little superheroes in the vicinity, you probably want to put the earphones on to continue this episode. But with that warning having been made, tell us as much as you can, because I know the plot of this thing is shrouded in mystery like a George Lucas Star Wars movie. But
Well,
what plot you are allowed to say, please
yeah,
tell
Kevin
us.
Feige is watching this right now, so if I make a misstep, he will text me. First strike, and actually, I'm on my 5th strike. So the story centers around a father and a daughter. She's about to turn 18. Her mother, this is all in the bio. It's on the website. You can read. She dies in childbirth, right? So, and the dad wasn't necessarily the best husband before this happened. So he's forced into the situation to where he's either going to step up and be a responsible parent, or he's just going to continue down this path. So he does what anybody else does. He goes to the extreme parent side. So then he becomes this overprotective dad. He's not very comfortable in his role. And we pick up this in the first book because she's wanting to go out and go to this party with her friend. And he's like, no. She's like, you're always very protective. I don't understand what's going on, whatever. And, all he sees is, I'm going to lose you like I lost your mom. Couple that with the fact that he has this terminal brain cancer, and he's been diagnosed with very short time to live. So he's trying to put all of this into a package to where he can comfortably die, and at the same time have some type of feeling of solidarity, I guess, or relationship that when he leaves his daughter, that they're on good terms. And of course, this doesn't happen in the book, right? Because something happens and she gets abducted, and then all these terrible things happen. So that's kind of where the first book goes. Okay, let's go. Well, not get spoilery, but let's just say that because of these things, he takes on this role of, okay, I've got to fix this. Something's got to be done about it, because I don't feel like the powers that be, the sheriff, and all that, the structure, he feels like they've all failed him. And as he goes deeper into this, because he, with his brain tumor, he has this episode of stroke, I guess you would call it, to where he develops like psychometry or whatever, where you can see people's memories. So his first encounter with this is he sees there's something else going on here. He doesn't understand what it is, but he knows it's bigger than just, oh, my kid was abducted and assaulted. There's a bigger story here. So that's that's really where the first 2 books sets all this up, and then book 3 just takes off for the next 3 issues, and it's just mayhem and chaos. And if you like that kind of stuff, it's pretty juicy. Let's put it that way.
There we go. Cool. And that brings us really into what I wanted to talk today when I heard the premise of your book. A concept that is, I think, a very pressing one in not any particular moment in society, but any time in any society throughout history. The question of what happens, like when you said the powers that be don't do what they're supposed to do and let evil people go scotch-free. What is to be done in a situation like that? And superhero comics, basically from their beginning, right, have answered that question with saying, well, somebody needs to step up and make sure the justice is achieved in this situation. Because what I think most people just can't accept letting happen is the bad guy getting away, right? That's the paramount thing that can't happen, that people are just not comfortable with, is that happening. I actually remember a friend of mine who was a pastor in a sermon actually talked about how profoundly disturbed he was by Infinity War. Because at the end of Infinity War, Thanos won and just gets away.
It was a great ending. I loved it. I thought it was
It
so
was.
perfect.
No,
Yeah.
it worked really well. And it profoundly bothered people like him, where he was like, no, the bad guy has to get caught. He can't win at the end. And there's something in human psychology that just can't accept that.
Well, that's very much a biblical concept too, because you look at, say, the Old Testament, where when the Hebrews were oppressed, right? They're calling out for justice from God, and they may die and never see it, but in their mind, one day, judgment's going to come. You see it in the New Testament too, right? You see it all the time with, one day God's going to come back and going to kill all you folks because that's to get justice for this or whatever perceived evil or sin or something they don't like in culture or whatever. And some of that is probably very terrible, and some of it is probably not, right? It's just good and evil, very much concepts of religion and this whole thing. I'm not saying there's not good and evil, but I'm saying it kind of originated with religion in the sense, in the West anyway, of this is good and this is evil and this is what we say it is. And then the counterculture comes in the 60s and says, but is it really evil? Is it really? So then we have this whole questioning of this and this age of postmodernism and then post-truth that we're in now. Some say, we're getting off track here. I'm sorry.
No. These are the kinds of conversations we have on this show. So that's totally cool.
But taking it back to the justice thing. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I have two daughters. One's adult, the other's about to be an adult. So, something like this happened to them. I don't know how I would handle it. Like, I don't, I'd like to be like everybody on Facebook comments and say, I'm going to go shoot them. I'm going to kill them. People in social media. Everyone's John Wick. But,
yes, I know, right?
Yeah. So, but, like this, the whole story originated from a true crime deal that I was watching 20-something years ago, where this teenage girl was abducted and assaulted, and she lived, and she did this interview with her dad. And I just remember looking at her dad thinking, man, this guy's got to be like, what is going through his head? Like, because you could tell that he was despondent, he was depressed, he was angry, he was guilt, because his girl got violated in so many ways. And she was actually handling it better than he did, at least in the interview. And then I thought, what would happen if this guy had a chance to meet these people? Like, what would he do? I guess that's the question. Like, what if? And I'm pretty sure he would probably kill him. I mean, or at least hurt them.
Yeah. Well, and that's a scenario that has played out many times in history and fiction. Like, for instance, A Time to Kill is another famous example I can think of from more recent culture and media. When is it justified to just straight up take someone out, right? And those are big questions, right? And like you said, the Bible touches on it. It's actually interesting in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, where most of the laws that Jewish folk follow come from. There's actually a lot of specific rules about murder in there, and murder is taken extremely seriously. There's actually some language about how you cannot allow a murderer to live. You have to purge the evil from the land. There's a very interesting connection to the land itself, and that the land must be purged of this evil. And there was actually this concept called the Avenger of Blood, which was essentially the male next of kin to whoever it was who was murdered. It was specifically their responsibility to go after the murderer and be the one to take them out. Now, the interesting thing is, though, if that's the only rule you have for a society, it's like, oh yeah, brother kills murderer of, sibling who was whacked. If that's all there is, most people realize that descends into chaos real fast, right? If that's the only system that there is for handling these issues. So it is actually more complex than that. You had this idea of cities of refuge, which was basically there were these designated cities where anybody who killed somebody could run to. and be safe from the Avenger of Blood, at least temporarily. There would still be then a trial with the elders of that city and the Avenger of Blood who came to track the guy down. And they would determine whether this was in fact a murder or whether it was what we would call manslaughter, right? Where the guy didn't have anything against the person who got whacked. He was throwing a rock in his field or something, right? And it happened, hit him on the head, and he died, right? That was not considered murder. That was an accident manslaughter. And in that case, you were not going to let the Avenger of Blood take that guy out because he was not a murderer. He was just an unfortunate guy caught in an accident. But if they determined that it was murder and there had to be 3 witnesses to it for them to be able to declare that this was in fact murder, it's very specific. You can't declare someone to be guilty of murder on the basis of only 1 witness. It just is not going to happen. And so if they had all 3 witnesses, it was the duty, not just like the right, but it was the duty of the Avenger of Blood to kill that guy and to make sure that this evil was purged. And that's very interesting as a system of governance in an ancient society where there is no police per se, right? That it becomes a family matter to take care of.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's a community type deal. And then you have the year of Jubilee, right? So do you kill someone right before Jubilee and you're like, yeah, good, I killed,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm just I'm sure people did that, humans don't change much. So someone in their mind's like, I can murder this person and then it's Jubilee and I'm good. I can walk.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. But yeah, so, in our society now, like you said, you have the police and then you have all the layers of law enforcement from the federal down to the local. And we're supposed to adhere to these things. And, we do have the court with the witnesses and all that. But, like you said in the beginning, and take that, for example, what if those witnesses were lying? What if it was an effort to get rid of someone? Let's say they wanted their land or they wanted their daughter. They wanted something from them, obviously. So then they conspire to kill this person. So I guess it's really not a perfect system, even in that. And so it's, I don't know. And then
there's actually, sorry.
No, I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. I was about to say there's a famous example from the Bible itself of what you just mentioned, because there's a story about one of the worst kings in Israelite history named Ahab, not to be mistaken with the whale hunter from Moby Dick, but Ahab, who wanted a field from some guy, right? And so the guy wouldn't sell. It was his, ancestors' land. He wasn't going to sell it to anybody for nothing, no matter how much he was offered. And so his wife, the infamous Jezebel, right, which is where we get that insult from, she came up with this brilliant idea to have 3 different people accuse this guy of a criminal capital offense and then kill him. And that's what happened, right? And then the king just seized the land as, his right to do and went on. So I think that something that people don't often get their heads around until they've lived long enough is to see that I'm not really sure that anybody can come up with a justice system that is 100% foolproof, that is 100% non-exploitable, like you were saying.
I think the word looking for is 100% not 100% human proof. Because humans inevitably are chaos and mess everything up, generally for love, revenge, or money. Right? Those are the 3 reasons we kill. That's pretty much everyone's motivation in life to do, to either go get a job or to whatever. So you have that abuse of power, but when you look at it though, it's not a bottom up abuse, it's a top down abuse, right? So exactly. it's not like the common people can do that. You have to have a position of influence, which makes it even worse, which ties us into Jesus's whole argument against the church leadership in his day, right? When he was flipping tables at the Bank of America, he walks into the Bank of America, whatever they had, and he's flipping tables and saying, "You guys are, fleecing our people." And I'm sure he used some pretty harsh language in the temple.
Oh yeah, super harsh.
Yeah. So and there's always been this thing throughout Scripture where if you're an authority, you're to a higher standard, right?
Yes.
And so when you look at the Avenger of Blood, it makes sense because you have this idea that in order to carry out this justice, it has to come from the top. Like it should all come from the top, right? It should all come from here, and so that it's justified and so that it's righteous, I guess. And then having these safeguards in with the three or whatever the justice system is, it makes sense because if you take into account, like I said, the humanness, it's all corruptible. So and having enough voices in there, I guess, would meet out that, which ultimately doesn't.
Sadly, yeah, you see the French Revolution and how well democracy works when you got a mob mentality. It's chop, chop, chop. All these systems are exploitable, as you said, and yeah, you're right. The problem. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say all the isms suck. Essentially, if you take them to their logical human end, they all collapse on themselves.
Sadly, yeah, they do, and that's what brings you right to this same question that you explore in this comic, and that countless comic book authors, right, have explored. Some of the most popular characters in comics, right? People like the Punisher, who I often talk in my classes, dude, this is one of the most popular characters in the American South for sure. Like, I can't count how many trucks have a Punisher logo on them.
Law enforcement, pretty much the opposite of what Frank Castle stands for.
I know, right? That's so ironic. Yeah. The idea of when you have a corrupt system, right? When you have something that is not doing what it's supposed to do, who watches the watchers, right? What can be done? And the answer to this in these comic books has often been somebody needs to step up and get past the bureaucracy and do what needs to be done. I think it was Frank Miller who said that in order for a realistic Batman story to happen, you must have a non-effective police force. You cannot have an effective police force and in a realistic world, Batman come into existence, because it doesn't work. The whole point of these characters is that they exist when a system is broken. Exactly. And that's very fascinating. Like, it's super powerful. That's part of why I think superheroes are so popular, because, frankly, there are a lot of people out there very frustrated with the kind of bureaucratization of the justice system, and frankly, how many times it does fail, right, to actually mete out justice in people's opinions. And that creates this kind of longing or fantasy for, if somebody would just step up and do what needs to be done. And that's part of the wonder of superheroes.
Yeah, it's the one day they're going to get you. The one day you're going to get yours kind of thing, It's the sowing and reaping, which if you allow me a second here to talk about, there's a character in this book that falls into this. He's an elderly African American retired preacher. I know for some people, how do you retire from a calling? But whatever. And his story actually goes back 50 years prior to this story. So during Jim Crow, it's a whole other story that I'm going to write. Oh, yeah. But I'm introducing these characters a little bit in this story. So he suffered very much an injustice in his time from the establishment. Jim Crow, obviously, you could shoot a black person and then be like, well, they tried to attack me. Okay, I believe you. That's just how it worked. And there was no voice for African Americans at that time, or anybody who wasn't white and male. But so anyway, this character though is kind of the MLK to the vigilante though, but yet still a warning because he talks about the corruption and the years of embellishing and getting away with these things, that it's finally come back on them, kind of like you're the Avengers, right? Not the Avengers. No, hey, look at my shit. Yeah. But like this concept of the one person who takes justice. He kind of gives it's in the third book. He gives this warning as this is going on. Like this is happening because of the decades of all of this stuff. And of course, he doesn't advocate it. He does offer redemption through coming out and asking for forgiveness and turning yourself in. Of course, nobody's going to do that. But there is this other voice in this story that I thought was kind of neat to play off of this like extreme, justice or whatever, revenge. Yeah. Because I thought about it, I was like, do I want to like a corrupt church thing? And I was like, I don't want to do that. Let's play off this extreme violence, basically saying the same thing, but getting there a different way. Kind of like MLK and Malcolm X, right? MLK was like, nonviolent protests, and Malcolm X was like, well, if they come at me, I'm going to do whatever any means necessary to defend myself, right? He wasn't necessarily advocating going out and shooting people, but he's like, if they shoot at me, I'm shooting back, kind of thing. So that's also something in the story that I can divulge.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because that sounds like you've got, on the one hand, like if we're going to put it in biblical terms, like the Avenger of Blood on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have like the prophetic voice, right, of like the prophets. Yep. Who are not usually themselves violent, but they're warning people like, look, man, this is a sinking ship. And if you don't do something radical, it's not going to end well for you at all. Right?
That is it. That's it, dude. Yeah. He's like the little prophet guy that's like, man, y'all need to change this. Y'all going to be dead. I mean, essentially, that's
exactly. Exactly. And that's a great paraphrase, actually, of what a lot of the prophets in the Bible are saying. Like, look, guys, Babylon is coming, right? Like, if you don't change, it's going to be bad. Bad. But ironically, no one ever listens to that guy, right? So
no. I mean, but I think that's the way it's supposed to be, though. No one listens to it because no one wants to hear that, especially if you're indulging and you don't care and you're like, yeah, I'm invincible because I'm this or I'm this big empire. We're never going to fall. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And that's
if you've been getting away with crimes for years, why would you stop now just because somebody said you should?
Yeah. And hence why, the cycle keeps happening as we talked about, of the vengeance. And go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say until the hammer starts falling. Literally, the hammer starts falling. Yeah, and then what do you do then? Well, you probably if you're not dead, you're going to be dead. So, but anyway,
it's there comes the point where warned them over and over and over again, which happens in the Bible too, and then finally,
reaping and sowing, very much a biblical concept. Reap and sow, with the old harvest, the old agricultural metaphors, right? So
exactly, yeah. They used to understand that better, In Arkansas, I think people get that more because there is a little bit of farming still going on in Arkansas.
Oh yeah, I mean, where I live, especially because I think you're at the bottom of the Ozarks, maybe over there. We're all swampland over here, so it's rice and beans, and now we're getting some corn. So yeah, mosquitoes love us.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. That sounds miserable.
Yeah, it's awesome. Oh well,
it happens. That's also another story that's come to my mind from the Bible that I've studied a bit and may eventually do something with academically. It's one of the most horrific stories in the 1st and 2nd Samuel cycles. This is like, let me put it this way. I've never heard anybody teach a Sunday school class on this story. But frankly, those are some of the stories from the Bible that I value the most because as I say often, the Bible is not a kid's book. And there are things in this thing that go to the heart of the real tragedies and the real mess that happens in the real world. And there's a horrible story in 2 Samuel regarding the family of King David. And, they were very comfortable with polygamy back in the day. So David's got a whole harem, right? So that produces a bunch of different kids who are same dad, different moms, but simultaneously, right? Not a breakup situation. And one of them is named Amnon, and he becomes obsessed with his half-sister Tamar, and he actually rapes her. It's one of the most graphic, heart-wrenching depictions of rape in the entire Bible, actually, because it has the dialogue between them and her begging him, her seeing what's coming and begging him not to do this to her, and then him not listening, and then he hated her after he raped her just as much as he quote unquote loved her before, and then literally throws her out into the streets. And again, most biblical scholars will agree that in the Torah, rape is a capital offense, right? If you rape someone, it is the death penalty for you. And David is in an interesting position because he's the king, but he's also the dad of both the victim and the criminal. And it says he gets really angry and he does nothing. He doesn't do any justice in this scenario. And the full brother of Tamar, Absalom, he gets really ticked off, very understandably, I think. And so he eventually decides to take matters into his own hands and gets Amnon away from Jerusalem, the capital city, and he and his boys kill him real good. And then Absalom takes off. And there's a great question about, was that actually murder? Or was that just Absalom being the avenger of blood and doing what his dad should have done by killing his brother? Of course, people argue, oh, that's, fratricide and whatnot. But at the same time, right, he was just getting away clean with committing this horrible thing.
Yeah, that's interesting for David, too, because, he had someone killed so he could marry their wife.
He's not squeaky clean.
That was a whole argument between the two kingdoms too, and there's a lot of biblical criticism by some that David was glossed over a lot in these ideas of the southern kingdom, right? Which that's a whole nother conversation of some people, like they glossed over that and later on and stuff. So, but David got away with a lot of stuff too. But don't we all though? I mean, I haven't had anybody murdered for their wife, but I'm just saying, we've all made questionable decisions to a certain extent and not being held accountable for it. So, but that's a tough one though, because I've known people in their families who've had similar situations to where a family member raped another one. And how do you handle that? Yeah. And do you call the police? Do you involve the authorities? Do you and sometimes they do. And then it doesn't matter what you do, it tears the family apart, right? In these situations. Because some people are going to believe the victim and some people are not going to believe the victim, right? It's just how humans are. And so, and what I've seen in my family, it's always best to call the cops, man. If something's happened, get them involved and hold people accountable. And in David's case, he should have at least punished his son. But then we get to the value of women in the Old Testament. That's a whole nother because I wonder if it had been one of his male sons that had been violated in some way, how would he have reacted to that? Maybe a little bit differently. I can't speak for the guy, but I'm just saying
possibly
the story could have played out a little bit different. And the brother, I wrote a story about a guy who murders people, so I guess the brother kind of acted right. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the big question, where I don't think that, again, my sympathies, I'll just put my cards on the table. I don't know that anyone can really blame Absalom for reacting the way he did in the face of the person who's first your father, second the person who's supposed to be responsible for bringing justice in these sorts of circumstances, just doing nothing, right? There is, I think that's the question all of us have to answer, right? Well, hopefully we never have to answer it, but it's sometimes worth thinking about. If that was your sister, right? How would you have done the same thing? Would you have done something different? Sometimes I think that people on the internet especially can be a little bit too glib sometimes with just jumping to a conclusion of like, oh yeah, man, I'd totally take that dude out, blah, 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 blah. That's easy enough to say when it's just an internet hypothetical, right? But the sad thing is, for a lot of people, this isn't a hypothetical, right? These types of things do happen. A lot of us are fortunate enough to be insulated from it, but there's suffering all around us. As I've told my students before to kind of wake them up, right? Statistics are among your high school students, for instance, right? That age of kids. These aren't probably exact because English professor is dyslexic with numbers, but last time I checked, it was something like 1 in 8 to 1 in 5 students are facing some kind of abuse in their life, whether that is sexual abuse or verbal abuse or getting beat up by parents or a family member. So you can walk through halls of a high school, right? You can count and go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that kid's being abused. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that kid's being abused. It's real for a lot of people. And we know statistically, and this kind of figures back into your story with a family situation, father and daughter, right? Again, the facts are, sadly, many of those cases of children or teenagers being abused, being assaulted for myriad different reasons, justice is never achieved in our society for those people. And that opens up the logical question of, well, what do we do about this? Do we try to elect new politicians? Do we try to make new laws? Or does somebody just start taking people out? And, it's a big question.
No, I mean, you raised some great points there. I think when you look at kind of the history of just across the country, different state laws with how sexual assaults are handled, and there's been a lot of great strides made, laws changed. Post Me Too, whatever you feel about Me Too, it did bring awareness to this, idea of sexual assault and advances. Same with the sexual harassment stuff in the 80s. All these things reach their extreme end, and then everybody's pointing fingers at everybody. But I'm just saying the central idea, though, definitely needs to be addressed. And I know that my wife and I are big true crime doc fans. I've been my entire life. That's really where the story was birthed from, was watching one of those, as I said. I believe I said that here. I've done so many podcasts.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, cool. So I'm not losing my mind.
Nope.
And so when you see some of these cases that were in the last 20, 30, even 40 years, that, like, for example, a woman was raped and beaten. She didn't die, but the guy got like 3 years and probation. When you look at the recent case with the Nickelodeon documentary with, where the guy was raping the minor and just sodomizing him and everything. If you watch that, I can't remember what it's called now. Quiet on the Set. What's his name from Drake and Josh? He was raped by this guy for a year or so. Went to court, and the guy got like probation. So it's like, how do we? Because then people don't want to come forward, right? Because if you watch the documentary Dancing for the Devil, which is a good one on Netflix, by the way, it's this cult in California that this guy still is, taking TikTok dancers, taking their money, but then he's also raping. And so one of the ladies is like, why would I come forward? Because no one takes me serious. All they want to do is interrogate me and act like I did something wrong. So yeah, I mean, there has to be some changes made. Like, victims should be able to come forward and state their case and have that investigated in a professional way, not to make them feel. And that's not to say that everyone that makes a charge is true, because
definitely.
I mean, you could run somebody's life with an accusation. So there definitely needs to, like you said, the internet culture. Like we definitely need to let the process play out before we start taking sides, because everyone is team this and team that. I'm like, you have no idea what happened. You're not. Even the people that are involved don't know all the facts, because sometimes the cops don't tell anyway because they're investigating. So I think people just need to take a deep breath. But I also feel like we need to make changes and make sure that we're protecting boys and girls, men and women, whoever, because men can also be a target of assault as well. It doesn't have it doesn't have to be just women. It can be men as well. And so obviously the answer to this is not my comic book. I'm not advocating that you go murder everybody.
No.
But I am saying that something needs to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to flip it to the other side of, again, I feel like I have been not purposely, I'm just trying to put thoughts out there. I'm not trying to say you should definitely go out and kill bad people. I'm just arguing the side for the sake of having that side heard. But the flip side of that too is that, you know, in Bible times with the Avenger of Blood, that person who killed someone with all of the community's approval, all that stuff gone through the right process, that person could then ride off into the sunset and, you know, go back to living his normal as his life can be without that family member who was killed, right? Life.
Mhm.
But today, if you decide you're going to go out there and do the vigilante justice thing, you are going to destroy your own life in that process. That's the curse of being that kind of vigilante figure. There's no realistic version of the story where the Punisher has a happy retirement and lives happily ever after. Right? Like, these people are broken forever, right? Even if they do survive physically, whatever they do, it is never a happy ending for them.
No, and it's, you know, as much as they inflict damage on someone else, the same thing is going on with them, right? Because it's just the law of physics, right? You push back, you know, and you somewhere you can only compartmentalize so much, you know. Even people who are trained special forces and all these stuff who are just trained killers, there's still something there that they carry with them. You know, they may not tell you. But I know a few guys who were Army Rangers and they got out for medical discharge, and you can tell like there's something going on there. You know, they're still very nice, but also you're kind of like, okay, let me not make this guy mad because he could go stab. You know what I mean, like, I'm not saying that all vets are crazy. I'm just saying that it doesn't matter what your training is, unless you're just a sociopath. Then you're going to carry some of this baggage with you. Look at Batman. The guy can't even get over his parents' death. But that's what motivates him to go out there and wear a suit and beat up disabled people in Gotham. And he's the 1%, which is a whole another thing, right? He's literally a rich guy eating the poor people. But Gotham itself is corrupt, and who would want to live there? Go to Metropolis because they got Superman.
Oh,
yeah, but yeah,
I will.
No, go ahead, dude. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'll save my apologetic for Batman for another podcast. There's a lot that can be talked about with Batman. But,
I mean, we don't, you know, without Frank Miller, Batman's dead. So there's that.
Oh, one version of Batman for sure. That's the other interesting thing is the plurality of Batman at this point is so extreme. There's so many different versions of Batman. And they each kind of have their own philosophies, which makes it difficult to talk about. But
he's a great character. He's a great character, don't get me wrong. But I've always been a Superman guy. But Batman has the better comic runs and arcs, but Superman is cooler to me. But whatever. I forgive you, Hollis. I forgive you, Hollis. Right now on your broadcast, the grace is I give you grace.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. But yeah, and you know, to go back, you know, people misquote Nietzsche all the time. But one of the quotes that I think people do generally get right when they talk about it is, be careful if you fight monsters, lest you become a monster yourself, right? And when you stare into the abyss stares back at you. There is a cost to doing that. And I think the more realistic superhero / vigilante stories that depict that kind of character, they have to bring that up, right? That these people are not living happy lives, right? As they are inflicting violence on people, even people who deserve it, right? That there's still something about that is harmful, right? That twists you on some level.
I think it's transactional. You know, I think there's like this transference. If I could channel my charismatic Christian, there's a transference of energy between these. You know, you go out and murder someone, you have to decide within yourself, this person needs to die, which isn't a normal human impulse. I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, I think most reasonable people don't want to hurt anybody for any reason unless they have to, right? I think that's a good.
Exactly.
So killing someone, you have to change who you are. And like I said, unless you're a sociopath, psychopath, something like that, then that's a whole nother conversation. But
Indeed.
obviously the main character in my book is neither of those. He's just a dad who's there's terrible circumstances, and he makes choices. I don't know if they're good or bad, but they just are, and he chooses to do what he does, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. And another disclaimer I will point out: neither myself nor Brandon are advocating any particular course of action in response to justice not being had in America or anywhere else. The point of, I think, literature in general, whether it's stories in the Bible or comic books or any other form, is not always to teach you, here's an example of a person, follow exactly what that person did because they've got the right idea. It's rather show you a story about a person, and you think about the choices that he or she made, and you think about it critically. Were those right choices? What can I learn from this? Not just as a mindless example, become a clone of this person, but rather to learn from their experience. Okay, what maybe was a good thing they did, maybe what wasn't a good idea, where are the gray areas, and to keep you thinking, right? Because that's ultimately how I think humans have most effectively spread knowledge, is through stories that continue to keep us thinking about good and evil, nature of life, ethics, all those things.
Oh, and I think it's just a human urge to want knowledge and to have some idea of control and power. Like humans always want to think like, it's hard for, especially post 2016, without naming any pizza or a gate thing. Things can't just happen on their own because sometimes life is messy, right? There always has to be a reason. We always want to know the reason why, and sometimes the reason is things just happen. There's a lot of people may disagree with that. Obviously, decisions went into this, but not everything can be narrowed down to one thing. Even in the story, it's not just one thing that led here. It's decisions by other people that got us here. Yeah. It's the people who abducted this girl, and decisions by the dad in the past and other people. And so it's community, for lack of a better word, that got us here. Not good, but bad things. And this is the outcome of. Yeah. And I also would like to say that Northeast Arkansas is not replete with. There's a lot of meth users here, but it's not replete with assaults and vigilante murders. I promise you. Don't throw it.
Yeah,
not a bad place.
Yeah, we need that disclaimer too. Exactly, that it's not all like it is depicted in The Evil Men Do.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And like you said, without spoiling the other two volumes, the legacy of what Will Baker does carries over into the next two volumes. So it could be that someone idolizes what he did, and then it could be someone hates him for what he did. So
I really like that you're doing that.
So nibble on that, handsome Hollis. But
well, it's cool because that's part of, I think, the long form stories. One thing that they really have an advantage over, like the one-off short form stories, is to show that in real life, as in fiction, a lot of times your story is never begins and ends with you. You are a link, right? In a story that's been going on long before you and will continue after you, right? And you don't fully see the ramifications of what the significance of that was unless you zoom way out and look at it from a generational perspective. And so I really give you props for thinking that way in your narratives.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, so I'm hoping that, this is a 5-issue volume 1. And then hopefully we get to volume 2, because we do get to see that pick up so many years later with the characters who are still alive, obviously. And then the fallout from this, and there's, I wish I could tell you about it, but I can't because it's good.
It's okay. It's okay. Anyway. And we may very well have another one of these later on after it's all come out, and then we can jump into more detail. So That's cool. Now, I also want to make sure that I give you time to talk about the Kickstarter for this thing.
Okay.
So I'm going to put the little ticker down there for all of you watching the video. This is the website below. Give us the gist of what we need to know about that.
Okay, so if you already have a Kickstarter, you can go to Kickstarter.com, type in the name, the Evil That Men Do, and it should pop up. If you don't have a Kickstarter, you can either copy that link or go there and do the same. Essentially, what you'll want to do, we're in pre-launch phase. So all we need, and this doesn't obligate you to buy anything or to, have to buy anything. Of course, I want you to get a tier, right? I want you to get a comment. But what this does is the publisher, Black Box Comics, is running this campaign. So this is not self-published. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't have time. I have 3 businesses. And I need someone more experienced to do this, right? So I don't need a stroke writing this book. So Black Box is doing all this. They're great. They're out of Queens. They have a lot of good titles. If you like more horror related stories, you should check them out. blackboxcomics.com. Anyway, you're welcome, Demetrius. So they're wanting to get a certain pre-launch number. We're almost at 90 now. He wants to get closer to 200. So we'll see. And once that happens, once we have those signups, and that's why it's important to do this, because it helps the project get out there sooner. You may not, you as in generally speaking, the viewer may not care, but somebody else probably does. And getting this out there means that they have the opportunity to buy in later. So if you go to the website, just notify me on launch. That's it. You'll get an email thanking you, and that's all you got to do. And then once the project launches, you'll get another email asking if you want to participate in the campaign. And at that point, you can look at the tiers. And if you want to, great, thank you. If you don't, appreciate you doing the pre-launch. That helps out either way.
Awesome.
And it's a $2,500 we're trying to get. I'm pretty sure we're going to hit that. And once that happens, the Kickstarter run for 30 days. And once that, then the book will come out. And issue 2 is already getting edited. And by the time all this is over, I'll probably have issue 3 ready to get edited, and issue 2 will already be inked and all that as well. So, yeah, dude, that's pretty much it. We can talk about the covers if you want. The artists and everything. I'm trying to take over the show here.
No, good. That's actually exactly where I was going to move to next. Yes, we got to work around it.
All right. So
Oh,
go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, for those of you listening, what we've just done is put on a poster for this that has, this is the first issue cover, right, and the variant cover. Is that correct?
Right. That's it.
Cool.
Yes. Cover A and cover B, as they say in the comic book world.
In the biz.
So if you can also go to, if you scan that QR code there, that'll take you to my website, the landing page for everything, from my store to the convention and everything. And there's a Kickstarter tab, and you can read the synopsis there if you want. And then you can also link to Kickstarter that way if you want a little bit more information. But as far as the artists go, if you would like me to talk about that.
Yeah, please do. I was just about to ask you, actually. You're ahead of me.
Handsome Hollis. All right. You need to put handsome in quotation marks in the middle of your name now. You're welcome. So the main cover and the interiors and everything, the lettering, this guy did everything. He lives in Turkey. So I did the most American thing I can do is outsource, right? So I'm outsourcing. But no, I mean, let me, if you don't care, I'll explain a little bit the cost of making a comic book, because it's not cheap.
Yeah, please do.
So traditionally in comic books, you have a guy who does the pencils, the inks, the coloring, and the lettering. The lettering being the words that you see in the bubbles and all that. Each one of those people has a per page amount that you have to make. So you imagine you got 4 people working on each page. You got a 20-page comic. Let's say each person gets $100, $200 each, right? So, and these are mid-level people. These aren't like, the top-level guys out there that are making a killing. And so you can imagine how costly a book would be. Of course, then you have to pay for a cover. And so I reached out to some friends of mine who do comic books. Very fortunate to have a lot of people in the business through the store and through booking and all that. And they were like, man, just Brazilian artists are hot right now. So I looked around and I couldn't really find anybody that matched the vibe that I wanted, right? If I can use the Zoomer vibe, the vibe. And I'm just trying to reach young people out there,
There you go.
I am on TikTok, and so I found a guy on Instagram, and he's from Turkey, and his name is very long, but we call him. He wants to be called Bura, and he's not quite my age, but he's close. But he grew up with pretty much the same music and everything I did, so we hit it off instantly. So as the kids say, he understood the assignment. So when I sent in the the pages with the panels, I do the caption, the words, and then I'll do description of what I want to be in this deal. It's like you're the writer and the director basically. And so he took that and then he did that's his main cover there. And I was like, make it like a 90s horror movie type deal, which it has very much that feel to it. And then there's a video out there you can watch on their website where it shows a lot of the interior and stuff like that. So he did such a great job. He's so excited to do this whole thing. If you're on Instagram, if you get on my page on Instagram, Real Bones and Jonesy, you can find him on there. Yeah, Real Bones and Jonesy. Yeah, not the fakes. All the fakes are getting sued.
Not the fakes.
Yeah, fakes get sued. And then on stateside, Ryan Gary Brown, who is also another great cover artist. He's done a lot of Ninja Turtle stuff all over the place. He's big because he's a big Frankenstein, as you can see from that picture. Frankenstein, the big hands and the smaller head and the big body. And so when I hit him up, because he was supposed to come to my convention in July, but he had some stuff coming and couldn't make it. And I was like, dude, I need you to draw me a cover. And I was like, I can only tell you like 3 things about this book. And he was like, okay. So I told him, he goes, so tell me more about the villain. I was like, this guy's the hero. And he was like, holy crap, really? So he freaked out. And then he's like, well, he come up with this. And I thought it was a great variant cover. It captures I don't know, it's kind of got a swampy feel to it because we are in the Delta here. And of course, that's not a mallet. That is that mini sledgehammer. And they have a name, and I can't remember what they're called, but they don't necessarily kill you, but they definitely hurt. But they can kill you, but the intent is not to die at first. Just put that. So anyway, that's who did that. And Ryan Gary Brown is also on my Insta. I think his name is like Zombie something. Yeah, so that's pretty much it with those covers. And I'm trying to get a different artist to do a variant cover for each issue. I've got a few that I'm talking to now. Those things are just costly, as you can imagine. If they're doing cover, they're doing the page count, or their page for that one page, right? So if it's $300 a page, it's $300 for the cover or whatever. So comics are very expensive. Thankfully, Bura's he did all the interiors, the lettering, the inking, the penciling, everything for a great fee. I was very happy with that, and he didn't really charge me much for the edits because there's always some edits to do. He was cool about it. He could have really been like, "No, bro," but no, he's nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I've had so much coffee that I will go on forever. So don't be afraid.
That's cool.
Mute my mic if you have to.
Well, I will say one of the things that just came to my mind when you were talking about the smaller sledgehammer, I was channeling my brother-in-law, who is a hardworking 3-degree holding guy. He's he works hard, both labor intensive and also intellectually. But he always comes up with these somewhat more creative names for tools. So, for instance, what I was just thinking about what he would call the smaller sledgehammer. I was thinking about like a smaller wham bam you with would be his way of saying it.
Tiny boom boom.
Yes, exactly. Cool,
I'm trying to. Oh, it's called. I'm looking online. It's called a club hammer. That's what I can never remember.
Club hammer.
Yeah,
see, and that just makes me think of like something you take out to rave at night, right? The club hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. Or on Molly. That makes sense. Yeah.
Now, one last thing I have for you, question-wise, is you had mentioned that you are the owner of the Comic-Con in your area. And if I heard correctly, this comic is actually going to have its grand premiere there. Is that correct?
Well, I'm one of the owners.
Okay.
Well, originally that was the release, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get it out in that time. I am trying to get something. I'm supposed to have a call with the publisher today or tomorrow. So I'm trying to get at least maybe like a preview, like a little ash can or something that we can promote the Kickstarter at the convention, or whatever, just something to get the word out, because I don't think that we're cutting it too close. So I am planning something in August though, even bigger. So I've got a bunch of local bands who want to put together like a show, have like music and have like a mini like little convention type deal with vendors and all that. So yeah, it might actually turn out to be something even cooler than the convention. So
wow, that sounds pretty cool. That sounds like fun.
Are you gonna drive up or what?
Well, you're tempting me. Actually, that sounds like a lot of fun, and I might my book, not a comic book, but I have a novella that will be out by that point. And so I'm keeping in mind different places that I might want to go to try to.
What is it about?
Mine is a vampire book, so it's somewhat old school. If you like Dracula, then you'll probably like this. It's set in medieval France. It is about two women who grew up together as kids, were best friends. They grow up and they go their separate ways, and then they come back together. And it becomes very obvious that one of them has gone through a transition, as in is now a blood-sucking monster of the night and wants very badly to sink her teeth into her old buddy. And so it becomes a cat and mouse game. But there's also some deeper stuff going on in terms of symbolism. It's fundamentally about abuse and the ways that abuse continues to perpetuate itself through the victims, sadly.
Like a stalker type deal.
Exactly. So,
well, I'm interested. When is this book coming out? Okay, let me put on my promoter hat. Promoter hat.
I appreciate that. The release date is, generally speaking, September at this point. Within the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to hammer down a more specific date. I am just about done right now. I am going the self-publishing route with this one. So I've just finished formatting the thing in Microsoft Publisher to send out to the publisher. I'm still waiting on the cover art right now. That's the biggest thing that I'm waiting on. But then we're going to send it out.
I'm excited. You gotta let me know. I can reach out to some. I mean, you're always welcome to come to the store. But I can reach out to some bookstores around here if you want to make the trip. Maybe they can do a little signing. I can't promise you they will, but I will definitely reach out for you.
And you should, I appreciate that.
Let's say have you thought about doing SpaCon? It's in September.
It is. That's a good point.
There. The store
nice.
and this comic. I'll have 2 spots there. So
wow,
you should definitely come in and say hi if you're not gonna sell your book.
I will do my best to get out there and say hi. I've been wanting to go to SpaCon for a while. I haven't actually gone, but I do really like Hot Springs. It's a fun town.
Yeah, it's a big Star Wars heavy. So if you like Star Wars, you'll like this convention. They do the Imperial March with everybody at the beginning. I'm a huge Star Wars guy, so I almost cry every time. I just want to I'm like, I'm at Jesus's feet, but it's Vader. So speaking of that, though, there's this guy there. He's like, man, I think he's still there. He's like a big evangelical dude, right? And he used to have this Star Wars like museum with it. It's a great collection. But
he still does.
And when they go in there, have you ever been in?
Yeah, I've been in there. I haven't been there since they moved to their newest building, but I actually interviewed that guy once. So
super nice dude. I think he goes to Superman cosplay. But I remember going in there, and the girl was like, "So Anakin's just like Jesus," and I was like, "Whoa, how is that possible?" I was like, "He killed all these kids and turned to the dark side. Where is the Jesus in that?" And she was like, "So anyway, over here you'll find the Obi-Wan Kenobi toys," and I was like, "Okay, cool."
Now, I do want to say the owner he's the Arkansas Superman. That's how you can find him online. He's a great Superman cosplayer too, and he does a
super
lot
nice
of
guy. I'm not knocking him at all, but it was just funny. I was like, how is Anakin? I mean, I could see some, the chosen one and all that, but the path that Anakin went down was
no. One day I'd really love I get always swamped with projects, right? So I'm like, okay, one day, maybe 10 years down the line, when I finished all this stuff, I'll do this other thing. But I'd love to write a book one day, actually, about George Lucas and Star Wars and Christianity, because I do think there's a lot there. I think there's a lot that's misunderstood, actually, about Lucas, because I do think there's something Christological going on with Anakin, but I feel like Anakin is more like, frankly, the American church from George Lucas's perspective, and like the way that the American church has become twisted, and it was meant to be the chosen one, but then it got into its head this idea of being the chosen one and the hubris that came with that, and how that has led to a downfall. So I think that more is probably in line with what Lucas was thinking. Maybe not. Maybe if Lucas is still around in 20 years, when I finish that book, he'll read it and be like, no, that guy didn't get it at all. But there we go.
I mean, that American church, America in general, I mean, the whole manifest destiny thing, you know, the lies that we tell ourselves.
Indeed.
Did I say that out loud?
It's like I tell people this all the time. I really have come to think that almost everything in life, with a few exceptions, almost everything in life is so much more complicated than you thought it was going to be. It's not this or that, it's both and, right? Like with all
it's
of
nuanced, it's messy, it's chaos. People want to take the wheel and control it, but you can't, because it's just nuts.
Exactly.
I mean, you can control it for a little bit, but eventually it's just going to do whatever it wants. It's like a teenager. It's like kids. You know, you can control the kids for so long, and then they're just going to do whatever they want. I mean, there you go. That's your metaphor. Take it.
It happens.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Brandon, man, I appreciate so much that you've been on the show. I've taken you over the hour that we do, and I want to congratulate you on getting this comic book out there. That is such a big deal to have that finished and getting out to the world. I commend you for doing it and for putting out another story into the world.
Well, man, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate the heads up from Screen Queens. Is that what it was? They're going to be at the convention.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm just trying to shame you. No, but seriously, I love the show. I love the conversation. I like that we can talk about the Bible, because I'm still I have a very deep faith. I'm not a big church person, but I still have a very, very sincere faith. So it's nice to have these conversations and not have to go down this righteous thing and justify all this stuff. You know, we're just two dudes talking about stuff we like.
Exactly.
I think that if I could take my social justice step here, I think if we as a society could come to be more accommodating, you know, allow people to have these ideas and be able to sit down and have these conversations and leave all of this other stuff to the side, right? Because that's the way the comic shop is. When people come in, I'm like, we're not going to argue about stuff here. We're not going to fight. You can do that out there, but in here, we're all just cool, man. We all like the same things. You know, if you want to get mad, go to 4chan or whatever you like, right? But we're not going to do that here. So I appreciate your show, man. It's great. And dude, I mean, you're fighting the power.
Oh, I try. Fight the bad powers. There you go. Well, thank you again so much, Brandon. And we will see you guys next time on the next Sunday Morning Superheroes. Take flight and fight the good fight.
It's like Coca-Cola, Levi Strauss, Johnny Carson and Mickey Mouse. The first star was James Dean. Elvis Presley, yeah, he's still the king. Some things are only imitatable. You can't beat an original. Oh, you can't beat an original.
Okay. And that is that.